I'm still growing my vegetables, but this has been a year for really beginning to concentrate on perennials, plants that come back year after year. Welcome back, casual gardeners. Let's talk about some common mistakes that people make with perennials. A few of these mistakes are counterintuitive. We're going to start with one of the more counterintuitive mistakes, which is over-amending the soil. It turns out you can have too much of a good thing. Perennials tend to need less fertilizer than our annuals. They rely on a much more developed root system to bring nutrients to the plant from farther away and deeper in the soil. Over-amending the soil can cause a few problems, and this is kind of a list of those problems. If your soil contains too much nitrogen, then your leaf growth may outpace your root growth. This is going to leave your plant vulnerable to a few problems because it's not going to have the roots it needs to support all of that top growth. Now, another issue is that if the soil around your perennial is too nice compared to the regular soil, the roots are going to be discouraged from branching beyond that nice patch. They've got everything they need right here. Why go looking somewhere else? And that sounds great, except if those roots don't quest, if there's a drought or you forget to fertilize or just drop the ball some other way, it's not going to have that vital root infrastructure to rely on to help the plant make up for whatever's going wrong. Don't pamper your plants, man. You want your perennials to be strong. Now, another issue is that the soil around your perennial may retain too much water if you over-amend it, and this can result in root rot. Symptoms of root rot are going to basically be the same as underdeveloped roots because you're losing root material. It's not a great thing. You're not going to be able to support that top growth, and your perennial may fail to overwinter successfully, which means it's not a perennial anymore. Many perennials, like these strawberries, tend to have a crown at the top of the root ball from which the leaves and branches will emerge. If you bury that crown, you can suffocate it and kill off the whole plant. If you're planting perennials in pots, make sure that you're not planting the perennial deeper than the original soil line. This can also be really important if you're potting up a perennial to a larger pot. When you're planting from bare root, like my peach tree, pay attention to where the root flare is and make sure you don't plant any deeper than the root flare. In fact, you want some of that root flare up above the surface of the soil. Perennials get bigger year after year. When we take them home and set them out, it's really easy to lose track of just how big this cute little perennial is going to get. This is a mock orange. It grows to a standard diameter of about 6 feet and a height of 6 to 8 feet, or even 8 to 10 feet. But you wouldn't know that looking at this little guy. And so your spacing can be way too tight. When we lay them out according to the spacing directions, we're going to end up with kind of a sparse looking garden, and that's going to tempt us to maybe fudge a little bit and bring them closer together. But there are some ways that ignoring that spacing advice can wreak some havoc in your garden. As your cute little baby plants grow up to big, strong grown-up plants, there can be too little airflow between or around them, and this can result in disease or pest problems for your plants. They're also going to wind up having to compete with each other for water and nutrients, and that can mean that instead of a big, strong, beautiful pest-free plant, you end up with a weak, leggy plant that takes probably more care than you want to give it. There is a way to fill that hole in your garden without spacing your perennials too close. You can use an attractive mulch or a ground cover between your perennials. While your perennials are younger and smaller, you can also interplant some annuals between the perennials. And this will help kind of visually close those gaps and make your garden feel fuller without committing to perennials that are going to be competing with each other later on. Mulch is magic, and I always recommend mulch, but it is possible to mulch wrong. And when we mulch wrong, we can have problems. Mulch that is too deep or too close around your plant can either reduce the air circulation down to the roots or provide a secret sneaky highway for pests to get to the trunk of, say, your apple tree. Remember to mulch in a donut around your perennials and not in a volcano on top of your perennials. The volcano mulching is a sure sign that you're going to run into trouble later on, especially if you're doing it to a tree. Don't apply more than about 3 or 4 inches of mulch on top of the soil around your perennial, and make sure that you've pulled it back between 2 and 4 inches away from the base of your plant to allow some clear soil around the trunk or stem of your perennial. That's going to make sure you're getting the gas exchange you need and you're not creating a pest superhighway. If you're like me, you buy your plants smaller because they're cheaper. There's nothing wrong with that, and I'm not going to tell you to stop. But these small plants are not going to perform to their potential that first year in your garden. You're not going to get the growth you expect. You're not going to get the fruit you want. Give those little perennials time to get established instead of deciding that there must be something wrong with them and tearing them out when they're just getting started. They're also going to need more water and fertilizer that first year in your garden because their roots have not established themselves and they don't have that vital infrastructure to bring them home the goodies. You don't have to stick to plants that are right for your climate, but you should probably pay attention to what's not right for your climate so that you don't get into trouble later. I have several indoor-outdoor perennials. Here in the United States, plants are assigned to USDA hardiness zones. And each of those zones is an expression of what the average low temperature is for an area in the winter. On average, that's the coldest it's going to get. And so plants are assigned according to that. This fig is hardy down to USDA zone 7. I live in USDA zone 6. So this fig tree will only ever live in a pot and will spend part of the year inside my house. If you live somewhere warm, you may also need to keep track of the upper number of their hardiness zones as well. Some plants have a certain number of chill hours that they need to produce fruit. Like I think my apple tree needs 800 chill hours. So if you lived down in Florida and you planted my apple tree, it wouldn't get cold enough, long enough to flower the following year. And then without the flowers, you can't get that fruit. In plants, those chill hours are an important safety measure to keep them from flowering too soon and then having all of their flower buds wiped out by a late frost. The hardiness zone is an average value. And in every climate, it is possible to have a winter with below average temperatures. So if you buy a zone 6 hardy plant in zone 6, you actually do risk losing your plant because if you have a colder than average year, that plant may not be able to handle it. Make sure you're buying plants that are hardy at least one zone below your own. Autumn is the second best season in which to plant perennials, but most perennials are going to need 6 to 8 weeks to get their root system established before the first frost. Pay attention to your average first frost date and make sure you're getting everyone into the ground at least 1 month before that date. Here in Logan, Utah, my average first frost is October 10th, and that means that for my benefit, I want to have all of my perennials in the ground by September. We're having a drought where I live. In fact, more than half of the United States is currently in a state of drought. So there's a pretty good chance you are buying drought-tolerant perennials right now. They're not going to instantly be able to tolerate drought. They need to establish their root systems before you get to neglect them. Water them just like everybody else for the first 2 or 3 months of their life with you. Trees are another example of plants that tend to be chronically underwatered while they're establishing. Most people do not realize how deep that water needs to penetrate to do that tree much good. Make sure you're watering your trees weekly while they're getting established, and make sure that you water them long enough for that water to penetrate several feet down. Here's another counterintuitive one. We might assume that a bigger plant will establish faster because it's more mature when we buy it. Smaller plants are actually more likely to outperform more mature plants of the same cultivar over time. They'll establish faster, grow faster, and develop better resistant to drought and pests. Larger plants in pots have a lot more foliage relative to their roots, and that means that when we plant those larger plants, they have to devote a lot of energy into catching their roots up to where their foliage already is. They may spend their entire first year just questing to get those nutrients and that water that they need to survive. Smaller plants, meanwhile, tend to have much more proportionate root to leaf ratios. So that first year, they're able to just take off running and keep on running from there. So it's not just okay to cheap out like me. It's a good idea. We're going to close out with a problem that most casual gardeners just aren't going to have, and that is overly assiduous deadheading. Deadheading is generally a good idea because it gets us more flowers. Flowers are awesome, and more flowers are awesomer. But some perennials like coneflower or rudbeckia depend on the formation of seed heads to signal that it's time to start getting ready for the coming winter. If we've removed all of the seed heads from the plant, they may not get that important signal that winter is coming. Without that signal, they might start to go dormant too late and suffer more from the cold than they would have if you hadn't deadheaded them too much. This is your invitation to be a little bit more lazy in the fall. Leave some seed heads on your flowers. It doesn't just help your flowers. A lot of your native bird populations may rely on some of those seed heads to survive the winter. And sometimes, if we're sloppy with our deadheading, we might even get some free baby perennials. Do you agree with my list? Do you think there's anything that I missed? Let me know down in the comments. And while you're down there commenting, don't forget to like my video if you liked it and subscribe so you don't miss any future gardening tips. I've also got some really cool stuff in the works for video topics. I have found some plants that I think most people don't even know about. Like there's a variety of corn that most people have never heard about that does something amazing that most corn cannot do. And I've got it in my garden right now. It's about 8 inches tall. You don't get that video until it starts doing the cool thing that I can show you. Thank you so much for joining me here in my garden today. And I hope you have a wonderful time in your own garden.